Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of Clone Your Favorite Sports Bra. Before we get started, I just want to welcome everybody who's watching this as a premiere at the Great Bra Sewing Bee. I am thrilled to be part of this amazing virtual event. So thank you for joining us, and I hope this is a fun bra sewing class for you. If you're new to my videos, I did part 1 of Clone Your Favorite Sports Bra on my YouTube channel, and I will make sure there's a link to that video so you can find it if you'd like to see how to cut apart a sports bra to make a pattern, because the pattern pieces I'm working with in this video are from my sports bra that I cut apart and made a pattern for. And you can see here behind me or next to me, I have one of my sports bras that I made using my pattern pieces, and I'm really thrilled with the way it came out. I've worn it quite a bit already, and I'm so excited to be sewing up a second one with you guys today. All right, so in front of me, you can see I've already cut out all the pieces and they're ready to start sewing. And I just want to review with you the pieces I'm working with. And if you're watching this and you have a sports bra that you're going to be sewing together, don't worry if your pieces don't match exactly. You don't have to make this style. Everything I'm going to show you in this video, you can apply to any sports bra pattern. So first of all, let me just show you the pieces. This sports bra has a 3-part cup. So this is my center front, my middle front, and my side front. Okay. And then the strap gets sewn on here. And these are my straps. Once the cup is sewn together, this lower band comes from the side and around the bottom, and it meets up at the center. I have to sew a center front seam there. And then we have the back bands get attached like that. So that's all the pieces I have in front of me. The way I'm going to sew it together is I'm going to use my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew each seam to put the cups together. And then I'm going to press the seams open, and I'm going to put this zero stretch nylon fabric behind the seam, and I'm going to stitch down on either side of the seam to create a really strong seam that has some structure and support, because this non-stretch will help hold its shape. To create some nice shaping and also comfort, I'm going to be underlining the lower band with some non-stretch nylon, and I'm also going to be adding some foam in the straps so they're padded. So before we start sewing, let's prep these pieces and baste them together, so as we go along, we're not going to have to worry about losing any of the pieces. To prep my pieces, I used 505 temporary adhesive spray to adhere the non-stretch nylon to my micro duplex, which has some give. That way it'll make it easier to sew together the 2 layers and, hold them together, so I can treat them as a single layer when we go to put the bra together. So if you're going to work with the temporary adhesive spray, make sure you put some newspaper down when you're spraying, and a well-ventilated area, because it gets really sticky and you don't want to get fumes. So, make sure you have a protected surface when you're working with the spray. But it does a nice job of holding the layers together, and that way my non-stretch and stretch won't fight so much. Now, even though I've glued them together with the spray, I'm still going to work with the duplex face down, and the feed dogs will help feed the fabric that has give against the fabric that has no give on top. So we're going to work with the stretchier fabric against the feed dogs, and I'm basically going to just sew around within my 3/8 inch seam allowance. I put my pins out of the way so I don't have to worry about, sewing over them. This step doesn't have to be super pretty. It just needs to be within your seam allowance because nobody will see it. Ooh, this one feels a little close. I'm going to take this one out. All right, see how nicely that sewed the two layers together? So I'm gonna go and sew this second half of my band together and I'll be right back. All right, so there's my second side of my band. The next thing we're gonna sew together or baste together are the straps. And again, I use the temporary adhesive spray to secure them together. But instead of using a straight stitch, I'm going to use a narrow zigzag. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to compress the foam at the very edge, making it easier to add the fold over elastic later. So I'm going to go to my zigzag stitch and I'm going to set that for 3 millimeters wide. And it's going to be pretty, the stitch length is going to be pretty long. I don't want a dense zigzag. I just want enough zigzag to, hold all those layers together. So I'm going to put my stitch length at 1.7. Okay. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stitch really close to the edge like this. We're going to be really happy that we took the time to do this later. All right, I'm just overlapping my start point a tiny bit. All right, so see how nice that is? Now all these layers are secure, plus the edges are squeezed together. So essentially we've made it easier to get those edges nice when we do the elastic. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the other strap and I will be right back. All right, there we go. Now all our prep work is done and we can start sewing our bra together. All right, so our next step is we're going to sew our cups together. And the way I'm going to sew the cups together, you can use this technique to sew your cups together, even if they're not the same shape as mine. So what I've done here is I've pinned my middle and center cups together and I'm going to sew them. Sometimes when you're trying to sew really close to the edge, when you're working with knit fabric, the fabric can actually get sucked into the needle plate through the zigzag opening, through the zigzag hole in the needle plate. So I'm going to use this very fancy tool called scraps of pattern paper to support the edge of my fabric as I sew the cup. So I'm just going to stick it like this. And now I can back tack and I can start even off the edge of the fabric if I want to and nothing bad will happen. All right, so I'm just going to start sewing. Remember, I'm using a 3/8 inch seam allowance for my bra, my sports bra. Normally when I sew knits on the sewing machine, I gently stretch it as I sew. And I'm doing that a little bit, but remember, we're going to be supporting these seams with that non-stretch nylon, so I'm not super concerned with creating a super stretchy seam here. All right, I'm almost to the top. All right, so this is what our cup looks like. Let me sew the other cup and I'll be right back. All right, let's take a look at these cups so far. You can see that using that short straight stitch really makes a very firm seam. All right, so I'm happy with the way my seams look. Now the next step is we want to support the seam so it doesn't get the full stretch or the full stress of being stretched. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to actually top stitch on either side of the seam through the seam allowance and this non-stretch nylon. So I'm going to put my cup on my ham here. It'll just help because it's got the curved shape. And I'm just going to pin it right to this ham for a second. That'll help me get it started. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that Wonder Tape, which is a double-sided sticky tape, and I'm going to stick it right along my seam. So see, this is just holding my seam allowances open for me so I don't have to fight with it. But I'm going to take this Wonder Tape and I'm going to stick it on. Like I said, directly on my seam. Let me see if I can keep going with it here. But I don't want to get the iron on near this fabric because I'm afraid it'll melt. All right, so I've got it all around here on this curved seam. I'm going to peel the paper away. And then I'm going to take my strip of nylon and I'm going to stick it right on top. Like this. So the cool thing is using this Wonder Tape, I can get everything sort of neatly together and then it'll be really easy to sew. Okay, so let's take a look at it from the right side now. I just want to make sure everything's laying nice and smooth. All right, so now we're going to go back to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew on either side of my seam. And what that's going to do is it's going to protect this seam from getting stretched. I'm going to use my edge or my stitch in the ditch foot here. That way it'll help keep me honest with how far away I'm stitching. So I'm going to put the guide right on the seam. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'm just going to sew on either side of it. And the stitch length doesn't need to be tiny for this, so I'm going to lengthen it to, I don't know, maybe 2.5. Let's try that. Back tack. You know, and as I go, I'm going to stretch the fabric away from the seam like this. All right, so see how that looks? I'm going to do the other side. I'll just flip it over so I can use the same needle position. All right. All right, see how cool that is? Now the seam is completely protected. All right, so I'm going to add this nylon strip to my second cup and I'll be right back. All right, so both of our cups, the center and middle, are sewn and supported. The next step is I'm just going to sew the center front seam, which is from here to here. Okay, so this is my center front seam, and then this begins my neckline edge from here to here. So I'm just going to put my right sides together, pin, and sew this short seam, and then I'm going to put the nylon strip behind it. So this step is exactly like sewing the cups together. I'm going to do that and I will be right back. Stitching the center front seam was really easy because it's a straight line basically, so it was a lot easier to do, and I actually didn't even use the Wonder Tape to stick the nylon on. You can see right here my stitching is a little uneven. I got kind of close to the seam. I'm not going to worry about that because the top 1/4 inch or so is going to be covered with the fold over elastic, so it won't be as noticeable when it's finished. So I'm not going to take that out and fix it, but I just wanted to show you that sometimes, like if you aren't 100% honest with your, the seam allowance you're using to stitch, don't be too hard on yourself, because in the end, the overall effect is going to be beautiful. All right, so our next step is to add the side cup pieces. And this fabric is actually scraps I have left over from my first sports bra. And I just thought it was pretty for a contrast. So I'm mixing and matching and using this. So basically the way this piece fits is it fits at the bottom down here and it wraps all the way around to the top of the center front piece. And this part of the side front actually continues the neckline. So that's what this shape piece is going to do. So I'm going to pin it on. All right, so that's how it pins on. I'm going to sew this using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Instead of pressing these seams open, we're going to top stitch them flat. So this technique is going to be a little bit different than the previous seams we've sewn. I'm going to put my fancy paper down to keep it from sucking into the bobbin case. Let's see how that looks. See how cool that is? All right, so now our cups are sewn together. This is exciting. I love it when it starts to look like something. To support the seam between the middle and center front cup and the side cup, we're going to push the seam allowances out towards the side cup, and I'm just going to edge stitch through all the layers. Because of the shape of the curved seam, the seam allowances want to flop over towards the side cup piece, so it's really easy to sew. And I almost launched off without my paper. That might have caused a disaster, so let me just stick some paper in there. All right, so I'm stitching between 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch away. If you want to be fancy, you could do a double row of top stitching here. I'm just going to stick with the single layer. All right, let me just do the other side. If you're using a edge stitching foot or stitch in the ditch foot and the guide gets stuck on your fabric, it's okay to stop, lift your presser foot, and just let everything relax for a second. All right, look how cool this is. It's really starting to look like something. I'm going to trim off all my little pieces of extra length on my nylon tape, because the next step is we're going to actually sew the lower band that wraps around to the side on next. So I just want to get these edges ready to go. So our first step with this band is we are going to sew our center front seam. So I'm going to sew this using a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to pin it onto our bra cups. I'm not using paper underneath the fabric on the edge for this because the nylon is nice and firm and it won't poke into the machine. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is lay my cup right sides together with my band. I'm going to pin my seam with the seam in the band. First, I'm going to put a pin down here. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep my seams matching while I fuss around and put pins on the ends like this to hold the seam allowances down. And then I don't need this pin anymore. Just going to pin to my seam between my center front and middle cup first. And then I'm going to go ahead and pin the end of it ends right over here where the curve starts. Probably should have marked my notch here, but so I'm going to pin that. And then I'm going to work back this way. Anywhere I have a seam allowance, I'm going to make sure I pin it down in the direction I want to make sure it stays. And since I didn't put my notches in here, I'm just going to make sure these are even. So I can see that they end the same, left and right sides. I've already tested this pattern and the pieces go together really easily, but make sure, especially if you're new to sewing and matching pieces, transfer all your notches to your fabric. Like I cheated there. I should have put my notches. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew right along this edge to attach this band to my cups. I'm putting the knit against the feed dog so it'll help feed it in with the non-stretch on top. The benefit of using the white thread when I basted those layers together on the band is I can see it clearly and make sure I'm sewing on the left side of it and making sure that basting is in my seam allowance. At the center front, I'm gonna sew to the seam, and then I'm just going to do a slight pivot because it's supposed to be a point. I get a nice shape there. All right, I'm coming up to the other side. Just so we can keep track of what we're looking at, this part here between where I sew the strap on and the side edge of this band, that's basically the front armhole. Okay, so that's what we've created by sewing this piece on. Let's take a look inside, and you can see it's really starting to look like a sports bra. I'm super excited. The one thing we have to do before we actually put the lining on, looking at it now, is I want to support the seam between the band and the cups, and we're going to allow this seam allowance to face up. All right, so I'm going to go back in and edge stitch along the seam. But you can see here, I just want to point out, look how nicely my center front band seam matches my center front cup seam. Happy with that. All right, so let me just go back to the machine, and I'm going to put my edge stitching foot on and just edge stitch along that seam before we add the lining. And again, this is easy sewing because the seam wants to flop to this side based on the curve. So this is easy, and just adding this extra row of top stitching will, make the seam allowance lay flat, plus it'll support the seam. I hand walk it till the needle gets right in that center front seam. Then I'm just going to do a teeny pivot to kind of try to keep that shape of that peaked edge there. All right, so the lining is going to cover this entire area, the whole cup and the band. That's all a one-piece lining. And I decided to cut it out of the micro duplex from Bra Builders because it's opaque and you can't see through it. In my previous bra, I used their light power mesh lining, and I will admit to you, this is amazing against your skin. I just want to see what it would be like, to have the lining not be see-through, because you can see with this power mesh, even if I use the black, you can see through it. So I'm just going to test using the micro duplex to see if I like it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin it, right sides together. So I'll start at the center and I'll work my way out. And so basically what we're going to do is just baste these layers together because it's all going to be finished with elastic around all the edges. So my lining piece fits around the edges. There is a little bit of stretch in the armhole area, but for the most part, it fits 1-to-1. So see here, there's going to be a little bit of stretching, but the rest of the way it matches. But it's not as wide, so there's room for it to stretch to fit when you're wearing it. So it's not quite as wide. So that'll actually give a little bit, more support because it's stretching to fit on the inside. If anybody's interested in working with these pattern pieces that I'm working with in this video, I have them as a free download in my J Stern Designs Fitting and Pattern Perfection group, which there's a link, below the video for that group. And then you can join that and get these free pattern pieces. They're a size 40G, which is my size. I also do fun live streams every Friday, my FabFit Friday, in that Facebook group. So if you're enjoying these videos, and you want more, you can join me Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in my Facebook group. This is an exciting step because the next step is going to be to add the straps. All right, you can see I've got the lining pinned on, and I just want to point out that, obviously the sports bra has negative ease. So because of that, we don't want to make, I didn't want to make the edges of the lining significantly smaller than the bra cup and band, because it's all going to have to stretch with me. And if I made the lining smaller and I had to stretch it to the bra, it might not have had enough give to then stretch to fit. So that's why the edges match for the most part, again, except right in the armhole where there's a tiny bit of, I have to ease it in a tiny bit here. But for the rest of the way, it's pretty close. So now the next step is to just baste it all around. So I'm going to baste it from the top so I can stay within my, the basting I already did here. And you can see that the cups pop up. Okay, so when I'm wearing the sports bra, the lining will stretch to make room. And I think that will add a little bit more firmness to the bra. Plus, this micro duplex is so soft and silky. I think it's going to feel amazing on. So I'm very excited to finish this and get it on my body. All right, I do not need the paper starter for this step because I am starting and stopping on fabric. So I don't have to worry about anything getting stuck in the bobbin case. All right, so I'm just going to stitch around. And I'm putting the stretchy lining side against the feed dogs because in some cases I'm sewing it to no stretch. All right, and here's where I'm going to just stretch it ever so slightly, right here in the armhole. Okay, now we're going to go across the top where the strap is going to get attached. And now we're starting the neckline edge. Okay, opposite armhole where there's a little bit of stretching. All right. If you are working with your bra pattern for the first time and you think you may need to do a little fine-tune fitting after you try it on, I would leave a little opening between the bra and the lining and the bottom so you can get in there easily and, take the seams in if you need to. I hope you don't need to, because when I was working on my first bra here, I had to go in and take the seams in a little bit. It was very time consuming to take all that stitching out. I feel like now it's tried and true, but just in case, if you leave a little opening here, then it'll be one easier step to get in there if you need to fix anything. All right. It looks a little smushy because the lining is pulling it up from the underside. All right, this is getting exciting because we've done a lot of work and now we have a few more quick steps before we start adding elastic. So the next step is to attach our straps, and those go on like this. So basically what we're going to do to attach the straps is I'm going to pin it like this. I'm going to sew it on using my 3/8 inch seam allowance. Then I am going to use a zigzag stitch to top stitch those seams down. I'm going to use a zigzag because A, it looks sporty, and B, I'll be able to hold the edge of that puffy strap down. I'll zigzag right over the edge of it. So that's how we're going to do these straps. So let's go back to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch with the lining face down. Again, I'm using my 3/8 inch seam allowance. All right, so there's one. Let me do the other one. All right, so here's my other strap. Now I'm going to switch to my narrow zigzag, and I'm going to use the same settings as I did when I sewed the layers together on the strap. I'm going to go to a 3mm wide and a 1.7 stitch length, and I'm just going to feel where that edge is. You know, I can feel it. It's right there, and I'm going to zigzag really close to that. See, and that's just going to hold it down. See, from the underside, that's nice and flat now. All right, so we have a little discrepancy in the width of the strap here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my rotary cutter, and I'm just going to really carefully just sort of smooth that out so it matches. I'm literally cutting off less than 1/8 of an inch. But then I want these transitions to be nice and smooth when I put my fold over elastic on. So we have one more step before the fold over elastic. I'm just showing you, like, if something doesn't match up like this, just go in and give it a little haircut. No one will know, except us. Now we have one last step before we start working with the fold over elastic, and that is to put our back bands on. And happy news, this is a really quick step. Okay, it goes on like this. So I am just going to pin them and sew them on. And then we're going to top stitch them flat. And this is the power mesh from Bra Builders. It's really, really nice. They're not paying me to promote them. I just want to point that out. So I like to tell, you know, my followers what I really like and what I really don't like, if it's appropriate. And I can't say enough about the quality of the fabrics from Bra Builders. I'm really happy. All right, so I am just going to sew this, again, using my 3/8 inch seam allowance. There's one. Let me get the other one on. Because of the shape of this piece, you get these points that stick out. But see, it matches when you turn it to the right side. All right, so to top stitch this down, I'm actually going to switch back to my zigzag. So I'm going to put my little narrow 3mm zigzag, and I'm just going to zigzag pretty close to the edge of the seam allowance. I can see it through the fabric. Because again, I want to hold it flat. You see how that holds it nice and flat? All right, so I'm just going to do the other side, and then we're going to start the exciting step of putting fold over elastic on. All right, I'm just cutting off my points to get the edge ready for when I do the elastic. Okay, I want everything nice and smooth. All right, let's look at what we have. Yeah, it's definitely looking like a sports bra now. I just want to show you two different elastics that you can get that are fold over. This fold over elastic has a shiny side and a little bit of a plush side. So I'm going to be using this because it matches my my micro duplex. So I'm actually going to put the shiny side inside so I have the softer side against my skin. So that's one kind of fold over elastic. And then Bra Builders has this amazing fold over elastic where it's satin on one side and plush on the other. So you don't have to choose between being shiny on the outside and being soft on the inside. You can find this in their panty section on their website. This is the first time I've seen this kind of fold over elastic. I love it because normally you have to choose between flashy and plushy. This one, you have the best of both worlds. And I actually use that on my first sports bra, and it's really, really nice. So again, I'm going to use lovely blue because it matches my micro duplex for this bra. But I just wanted to point out to you that you have options for your fold over elastic. You know, and if you wanted to do the shiny side face out, I'm sure that would be fine too. But since it's on the inside and no one's going to see it, I'm just going to use the matte, slightly plush side on the outside. So let's talk about applying fold over elastic. The first thing is this elastic has to stretch to fit your body, and we're working with a garment that has negative ease. So I am going to pin this on 1-to-1 everywhere except a little bit in the armhole. And basically you want to butt up the edge of your fabric in the middle where the fold is and then fold it over like that. And I'm just going to put a few pins as I go. But on this back band, if I were to stretch this elastic on like you would do like for a neckline, it's already using up some of its available stretch. So then when the whole thing needs to stretch to fit onto you, it's going to be tight. So that's why it's really important to not stretch it when you put it on. But you do want to make sure that the edge is butting up right in that center groove that creates the fold over. And this intersection right here, I'm just going to trim that a little bit more because I want it to be smooth. So where it bumps, I'm just going to almost create a little bit of a divot there to give myself a nice smooth transition from my armhole to the top of my strap. So again, see, I'm just going to do this. See, slide it over just a little bit and then pin it here. And then I'll have that little bit to stretch on when I do the armhole. All right, and of course the strap is 1-to-1. And here's where we're really happy that we took the time to zigzag those layers and squish the foam down, because it'll make it easier to get this fold over elastic on. Neatly on the edge. Now, here's a design flaw in my pattern. I'm actually going to trim this a little bit. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this part of my strap has to fit in this ring. You know, so when I go to sew it on. So actually, I forgot to fix that from my first version. So I'm just going to trim that down a little bit on both sides at the very top. So when I get to the top, the elastic will be touching When I made my first sports bra, I had to take the elastic off when I realized it was too wide. And then I forgot to fix my pattern piece. Anyway, so there's one, and I can cut this. All right, so to sew this on, we're going to use the narrow zigzag. So I'm going to show you how to do this on this side from here to here, and then I'm going to repeat it on the other side and across the neckline. So all of these steps are the same. So I'm going to show you once, and then I'm going to jump off and finish it. So this video is not 4 hours long. All right, so let's start on this edge over here. And the goal for this now is I want my zigzag to be completely right on the edge, right on the fold over elastic. So I'm just going to start, and I'm being brave and I'm using white so you can see. When I make my next one off camera, it's going to match the color of the fold over elastic. Okay, so I'm coming to where I'm going to have to stretch it in a second. All right, so here's where I need to stretch. So I just want to make sure that it's in there. You know, let's peek in there and look. And then I'm just going to stitch it. All right, I'm almost to the top. All right, see how that looks? I think the white looks pretty cool, actually. So I'm just going to go and put the elastic on all the other edges, the neckline edge and my opposite armhole strap. When I do the neckline, there's going to be no stretching. It's all going to be one-to-one because that whole thing is going to need to stretch to fit me. So I will see you back here in a few minutes. All right, I've got all my fold over elastic on, and in one instance right here, you can see there's some double stitching. That's because I caught it and it caused a little pucker. So I just took it out about an inch and then just smoothed that over. So again, I'm using white thread so you could really see what I'm doing. If you want your stitching to blend in, pick a color that matches your elastic. So the last step to finishing the strap is to put the metal slide on. For my bra, I am not going to make the elastic adjustable. I'm going to cut it to fit the length I like that's comfortable for me. So, I'll show you that when we get to it. But for now, what we need to do is put this metal slide on like this. Okay, and then we're just going to fold it over, and I'm going to use a zigzag to top stitch that or secure that end. And that will complete the strap. So let me just show you that quick. And then the next step is to actually put the strap elastic on the back of the bra. So this is kind of exciting. We're getting close to the finish line. All right, so this is a really easy, low maintenance step, and I'm gonna do it from the wrong side so I can see that I'm covering the edge of, or the raw edge of my elastic here. And I'm using that narrow zigzag, same setting. And I'm going to start more in the middle of the edge, and I'm going to go forward. Then I'm going to back up all the way to the other side and then come back and meet in the middle. That way I'm not pushing it on the side edges. So start in the middle, go to the end, and then back up all the way to the opposite side. You'll see that way it didn't push anything. And it is a double row of stitching, but again, I'm more concerned with it laying flat and not irritating than how it looks. I mean, I don't think that looks terrible. So I'm just going to put the opposite metal slide on, and then the next step is going to be putting strap elastic on. All right, let's get ready for the next step. All right, we are down to 3 major steps to complete the sports bra. I'm super excited. You can see in front of me, I've laid out all the things we need to finish. We have the bottom band to attach. We have the strap elastic, and I just want to say that this strap elastic from Bra Builders is amazing. It's thicker and firmer than some of the other strap elastic I've gotten from other places. Not that the other elastic was not nice, but this elastic is really heavy duty. It's perfect for sports bras because it's got a lot of oomph to it. So very excited about this elastic, and I'm going to show you how to use it. And this is an extra wide band elastic they have on their website that I thought was very cool. It has a plush side and, just the elastic side. You can get this in, any color to match your fabric. You can also dye it. So this is a very cool elastic. We're going to be attaching this elastic down here, and we're going to be attaching this elastic over here. And what happens with the bra and why it's so hard to try on a bra before it's finished is you really need to have this part of the strap sewn together and at least pinned so you can adjust it to your metal slide here. And then the band elastic, needs to be on. And then the final step is your hooks and eyes go on. And it's really important to look at the height or width of your hooks and eyes because you need to make sure the back end of your bra fits into it. So for me to use this wide elastic, I'm just going to pin it in place so you can see what I mean here. I'm going to overlap the base of my sports bra. I'm going to overlap that so that it covers this entire top part of the elastic before the break. So if I just pin that in place for a second, I'm going to then compare the width of this to the width of this, and you can see that that matches almost perfectly. So what that means is when I go to put my strap elastic on, that's going to have to be 100% on top of my power mesh like this, or I can trim this down a little bit so it's partially, sewn to the power mesh and then partially against your skin. So I think the other one I offset a little bit, so it was almost like half and half. So I think for this bra, I will just overlap it. Okay, so it'll get sewn on like that. So once these 2 elastics are sewn on, we'll add these hooks and eyes, and then I can try my sports bra on. I'm very excited. So I'm going to put this aside for now. I think we'll do the band first. And basically, just like the fold-over elastic, I'm not stretching this. I am just sewing it on 1-to-1 because we want the whole thing to be able to stretch when I put it on. From here to here, we'll stretch it a tiny bit so it snugs up against, my rib cage or my midriff. So from here to here, I'm just going to gently stretch it. I'm not going to really stretch it. I just want to give it a little bit of stretch so when I put it on, it will snug up. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And so for this technique, we are actually going to use our narrow zigzag. So I'm going to set my zigzag for a 3.0 width and a 1.7 stitch length. Let's start from I'm going to start from the opposite end. I'm going to start from this end so I can have my elastic plush side face down. I'm going to do this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to zigzag it right along the top edge. So I want to stitch completely on the elastic itself. Move it over just a little bit. And as I go, I'm just going to watch and make sure that I'm overlapping this so that the bottom edge of my power mesh or my band is just tucked underneath this level right here. When I get to the band, I just want to make sure nothing's curling. So as I position it, I'm just going to make sure, everything is laying nice and flat. I don't want it to peek out, so I'm just going to be careful. All right, so I'm just going to go right across. And I'm just stretching it a tiny bit. And remember, it's okay to peek under there and make sure everything is laying flat. All right, now that I'm on the other back band, I'm going to make it nice and relaxed and one-to-one. All right. All right, so there is my elastic on the bottom of my sports bra. And I think what I'm going to do is let's do a second row of zigzags so it's down. It's going to hold all of this nice and flat. So I'm going to go and do a second row because I'm working with this wide elastic, and I'm going to move it down to the bottom. And as I go, I'm just going to make sure everything's laying flat. Almost done. All right, let's take a look. There's the outside of my sports bra. I like that. And then let's look at the inside. It did a really nice job of holding the lining to the elastic. That looks nice. All right, so our next step is to sew on the strap elastic, and to do that I'm just going to trim this fold over elastic to match. Let me see if I need to do it on this side. All right, so I'm going to position the strap elastic right on top of my power mesh like this. And let's start with this outer edge. So remember, I'm using my little zigzag stitch. And I want to stay right on top of the elastic. I don't want to get onto the power mesh. I want to stay right on the edge of that strap elastic. And I'm kind of stretching it to go around the curve. I'm not stretching the power mesh so much, but more I'm making the elastic match the contour of the shape in the power mesh. See how nice that looks? Now I'm going to just go along this top edge too to hold that down. All right, that's lovely. Let me do the other side, and then it's going to be time to put on those hooks and eyes. All right, to sew the hooks and eyes on, I like to see what I'm doing. So I bring my ends to meet each other in the back, because remember, one's going to be right side up and one's going to be upside down. And the larger, or the eyes, goes on this side and it goes face up, and the hooks themselves go on this side, or the right side, and those are face down like this. Okay, it's very easy to either put them both face up or put the hooks and eyes, put the eyes going the wrong way. Keep in mind there's a nice plush backing on this. That has to be against your back. So the way this works is there's a little pocket inside there to stick the end of your sports bra. So I'm just going to stick that in there. And I think I'm going to butt this lower edge right up against the bottom. Let's put a pin. And then the top edge goes in there as well. All right, so see how that fits in there? All right, so we're going to sew close to that edge, and I think I'm just going to keep with that zigzag stitch. And then on the hook side of things, it's the exact same procedure. It's almost like a little cup, and you insert the ends of your band into the cup. This is really exciting because after this step, I can actually slide the elastic through the metal slides and try it on. So this is really an exciting step. All right, so I've got it pinned. And I think I'm just going to use the zigzag stitch to sew this on. I'm going to make my zigzag just a skosh narrower because I don't want to hit the inside of these metal hooks. So I'm going to make my zigzag 2.5, and my width I'm going to keep at 1.7. All right, so again, I want to be completely on the fabric. I'm just going to back up a little bit, and then we're just going to go. I'm going to take the pins out as I come to them. All right, so there are my sewn on hooks. Now we're going to sew the eyes on the same way. I'm going to use my zigzag stitch. All right, look at that exciting thing. It's sewn on. I caught both sides first try. All right, I'm pretty pleased with that. Now, in order for me to try this on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my strap and I'm going to put it through the slide like this. And then I really think this is about the length I need. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pin it down here, and then I'm going to go give it a try on and see how it looks. All right, great news. It fits and it is so comfortable. And the length I made my strap was just a tad too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide it forward maybe a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to pin it. I'm going to trim it. Like this. All right, that way I can do a row of zigzag right on the edge, and then I'll do one right above it to reinforce it. So let me just get them both ready. Oh, see this right here? This could be a terrible mistake. See how I twisted? Definitely important to make sure you're not twisting your straps. All right. So now I'm going to make this strap match. Okay, we want them to be the same, at least for me. I know that if you're asymmetrical, you may need slightly different band lengths, but for me, they can be the same. So again, I'm just going to pin that, and then I'm going to trim off my extra. All right, let's go to the sewing machine and do this final step in the Clone Your Favorite Sports Bra Part 2. All right, so I'm literally just going to do this upside down so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to widen that zigzag back out to 3 millimeters wide. And we're just going to stitch right over this edge. And then I'm going to back it up and go the other way. I'm going to go forward. So I started in the middle, came forward, and then backed up. So let me just do the other strap that way. So I'm going to come forward, and then I'm going to go back, and then come forward again. Oops. All right, so that's my completed strap. Now for extra safety, I'm just going to do a second row a little bit above it. All right, I love a big reveal. I am super excited with my new sports bra. This fabric is luxurious. It's plenty soft and stretchy. This band fits really nice. That's what the back looks like. Very, very happy. So now I have 2 DIY sports bras. If you have any questions about sewing your sports bra together, please post comments and I will help you. If you missed part 1 of Clone Your Favorite Sports Bra, I'll put a link to that in the description. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. It really was probably one of my top 10 favorite projects. I definitely have the bra making bug now, so I will be making more. But very happy, very excited. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did, and I will see you next time.